You are standing at the base of something that should not exist. The stone beneath your feet is not rough. It has been dragged, shaped, hauled, and fitted with a precision that even modern engineers struggle to fully explain. Above you, the Great Pyramid rises into a sky that burns white with desert heat, and every single block in that impossible structure was put there by human hands. Hands like yours. Workers in the Great Pyramid did not build a monument, they endured one. And before this day is over, you are going to understand exactly what that means. Because the version of this story that most people carry in their heads, the organized labor camps, the fed workers, the organized society of ancient builders, leaves out almost everything that mattered. It leaves out the weight, the heat, the infection, the thirst, the darkness underground. It leaves out what happened to a body that was asked to do the impossible every single day until it couldn't anymore. The sun has not fully risen, and already you can feel it. Not warmth, heat. A specific kind of dry, relentless, bone-penetrating heat that the Sahara produces before most people in the modern world have even opened their eyes. You have been awake since before dawn because you had no choice. The work gangs organized themselves by sound, a foreman's voice, a wooden mallet striking stone, the shuffle of hundreds of sandaled feet on compacted desert floor. You have no alarm clock, no coffee, no shower. You have a linen cloth around your waist, sandals made from papyrus reeds that offer almost no real protection against the ground, and a body that went to sleep sore and woke up sorer. This is your uniform. This is your armor against one of the most physically demanding construction projects in the history of human civilization. Archaeologists excavating the workers' village near Giza found the bones. That is where the truth begins, not in the paintings on temple walls, not in the pharaoh's proclamations, but in the actual skeletons of the people who built the pyramids. Those bones tell a story that no scribe ever bothered to write down. Healed fractures on almost every excavated skeleton, meaning these workers were breaking bones and continuing to work while those bones knitted themselves back together. Severe arthritis in the lower spine, knees and shoulders, beginning in people who appear to have been in their mid-20s. Evidence of amputations that were surgically performed and survived, meaning someone cut through bone and the patient lived long enough for the wound to heal, which is both remarkable and horrifying in equal measure. These were not enslaved people in the classical sense, but calling them free workers does not begin to capture what their lives actually looked like. Your first assignment of the day involves a sledge, not a vehicle, a wooden platform fitted with runners. And on top of that platform sits a block of limestone that weighs somewhere between 2.5 and 15 tons, depending on its placement in the structure. You and approximately 20 other workers are attached to this sledge by ropes made from twisted plant fiber, and your job is to pull it across the desert floor toward the base of the pyramid. Wet sand is poured in front of the sledge to reduce friction, a technique confirmed by an ancient Egyptian wall painting showing exactly this process, with a worker at the front pouring liquid from a jar. The physics work. The human cost does not care about physics. Every step forward is a full-body struggle. Your feet sink slightly. Your lower back absorbs the shock of a rope that pulls against your entire torso. The man beside you is straining so hard his jaw is locked shut. This continues for hours. Water exists on this site, and that is one of the things that surprises most people when they first encounter the archaeological record of pyramid construction. The Egyptian state fed and supplied its workers in ways that were, for the ancient world, relatively organized. Excavations of the workers' bakeries and breweries near Giza confirm that bread and beer were produced in enormous quantities and distributed daily. The beer was not recreational, it was nutritional. A thick, slightly fermented grain beverage, closer to a liquid meal than an alcoholic drink, rich in calories and safer to consume than much of the available water. You receive this. You receive onions, fish, beef on certain days, lentils, The ration system was real, but the ration system existed to keep you functional, not comfortable. The difference between those two things is vast, and you will feel it in every part of your body before this day ends. By mid-morning, the sun has become something that needs to be survived, rather than merely tolerated. There is no shade on a construction site of this scale, except what the pyramid itself throws in narrow strips that shift as the hours move. Your skin, already darkened from months of outdoor labor, is being cooked again. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily and without mercy. You have no sunscreen. You may have access to castor oil or animal fat as a skin protectant, practices documented in ancient Egyptian daily life, but those substances trap heat as much as they block it. The insects are a separate problem. Desert flies exist in quantities that modern people in air-conditioned rooms rarely imagine. They move toward moisture, meaning they target your eyes, your mouth, the corners of your wounds. Eye infections were documented frequently in ancient Egypt, and on a site like this, where thousands of bodies are sweating, bleeding, and sleeping in close proximity, the opportunity for infection spreads faster than any foreman can manage. Now consider the stone itself. Limestone is not uniform. Some blocks come from the Giza Plateau itself, quarried nearby, and those workers are a separate crew entirely. Men hammering copper chisels into rock faces, driving wooden wedges into cracks and pouring water to expand the wood and split the stone.
Thank you, sister.
The granite used for the interior chambers comes from Aswan, hundreds of miles south, transported by barge along the Nile. Someone had to load those barges. Someone had to unload them. Someone had to move granite, a stone significantly harder and heavier than limestone, from the river's edge to the construction site using nothing but sledges, ropes, earthen ramps, and human muscle. If you are one of those workers, your hands have long since stopped being soft. The calluses on your palms are thick enough to qualify as a second skin, and beneath them, the tendons and joints are aging faster than your years suggest they should. The ramps are the part of this story that almost nobody fully absorbs. To place blocks at increasing heights as the pyramid rises, workers needed to move those blocks upward. The most widely accepted theory involves construction ramps, massive earthen inclines packed with debris and rubble, potentially wrapping around the pyramid as it grew. As the structure rises, the ramp must rise too. That means the ramp itself becomes an ongoing construction project layered on top of the main one. At certain points in the pyramid's construction, workers were hauling blocks up an incline that could stretch hundreds of meters, at an angle steep enough to require sustained effort and shallow enough to allow the sledge to keep moving. The men at the back of the rope are pushing uphill. The men at the front are pulling uphill. The foreman is watching to make sure the block does not slide backward and crush everyone behind it. Accidents of this kind happened. The bones at the workers' cemetery show the kind of crush injuries that a multi-ton block produces when control is briefly lost. Midday arrives and the pyramid becomes something strange. The shadows it throws shorten until almost nothing. The stone surface radiates heat back upward, meaning you are receiving solar radiation from above and thermal radiation from below simultaneously. The back of your neck aches in a way that does not suggest sunburn, but something deeper. Your vision narrows slightly at the edges, which is your body's early signal that something is wrong with your fluid levels. You drink when water is passed. You drink as much as you are given. It is likely not enough. Heat exhaustion on ancient construction sites was not a diagnosis anyone made. It was simply the state in which you arrived at the end of the day, or the reason you did not arrive at all. There are medical personnel. This is perhaps the most unexpected discovery in the archaeology of pyramid construction. Evidence exists of a workforce that received genuine medical care, including the treatment of fractures, the draining of infections, and surgical procedures that required real anatomical knowledge. But medical knowledge in ancient Egypt, advanced as it was relative to other civilizations of that era, operated entirely without antibiotics. A cut that becomes infected on a modern construction site is treated with a prescription. A cut that becomes infected here becomes a negotiation between your immune system and everything the desert floor carries. Soil at a construction site this large, where thousands of animals were butchered, thousands of humans were defecating, and organic material of every kind was decomposing, is not a clean environment. The bacteria living in it are not gentle. Workers who survived infection survived because their immune systems won, not because any medicine guaranteed the outcome. The afternoon shift involves the interior. And this is where the Great Pyramid stops being an abstract monument and becomes something claustrophobic and suffocating. The internal passages that descend into the bedrock and climb toward the burial chambers are narrow, low, and almost completely dark. Workers moving stone through those corridors worked by torchlight, linseed oil lamps or rush torches that consumed oxygen, produced heat, and filled enclosed stone chambers with a thin haze of smoke that had nowhere to go. You are not in a museum walking a widened passage with lighting installed for tourists. You are in the original space, bent at the waist because the ceiling forces you to bend, carrying a stone or a tool or a supply, moving in a line behind someone else who is doing the same thing, breathing air that has already been breathed by the people ahead of you. The temperature inside the pyramid stays relatively stable compared to the surface, and in the desert summer, that means the interior is cooler, but the combination of bodies, torches, and confined space pushes it back up faster than you might expect. Dust is constant. Limestone dust, granite dust, sand, organic debris from the ropes and wooden tools, and the bodies themselves. This dust goes into your lungs. Modern forensic analysis of ancient Egyptian workers' remains has documented evidence of pulmonary stress consistent with long-term exposure to stone dust. This is not a sudden death. It is a slow narrowing of capacity, a cough that never fully clears, a chest that never quite expands the way it once did. You are 22 years old, and your lungs are already beginning to show it. The sun drops toward the western horizon, and the sight does not stop. Torches are lit. Some work continues after dark, particularly interior work, where daylight was never relevant to begin with. When you finally stop, when the foreman signals the end of your shift, you walk back to the workers' village, which archaeologists have excavated in enough detail to reconstruct its layout. Rows of long galleries, likely divided into sleeping areas, with cooking facilities shared among large groups. You sleep on a mat, possibly with a wooden headrest if you are fortunate enough to have one. Around you are dozens of other workers, and the sounds and smells they produce are not abstract. They are the sounds and smells of hundreds of exhausted, unwashed human bodies sleeping in an enclosed space after a day of maximal physical output. You think nothing of it because you have never known anything different. You close your eyes and your body begins the incomplete process of repairing itself, knowing that in a few hours the whole thing begins again. Tonight, as you read this from whatever chair or bed or couch holds your rested body, you will probably touch something remarkable without noticing it. A glass of cold, clean water. A light switch that eliminates darkness instantly. A mattress engineered to support a spine that has not hauled limestone across desert sand. You might take a shower and feel nothing extraordinary about the experience of warm, clean water falling freely from a fixed point. Every single one of those things would have been beyond the imagination of the workers who built the structure that has defined human ambition for 4,500 years. The Great Pyramid of Giza still stands because an enormous number of ordinary human bodies were spent in its construction. Broken, infected, ground down, burned, and buried within walking distance of the monument they created. You would not survive 24 hours in their place. Not because you are weak, but because nothing in your experience has ever required you to be that strong. If there is a place, an empire, a ritual, or a hidden corner of history you want to see reconstructed without the glamour and without the filters, drop it in the comments. The real version is always stranger, darker, and more human than the one they put in the textbooks.